In this section of AWS S3, we will discuss about storage classes and lifecycle rules for objects in S3. Now we talk about the S3 storage classes. So each object in S3 is associated to a storage class. So various storage classes which is offered by S3 are S3 standard, S3 intelligent tiering, S3 standard IA, IA is infrequent access, S3 one zone IA, S3 glacier, S3 glacier deep dive. So when you are storing the object in bucket, you can choose the storage class. Decision to choose the storage class is depending on various factors. Example, how frequently you have to access the data, what should be the availability of your data, and if the data need to be archived. Identifying the storage class based on the use case is important concept with respect to the certification. So in the next few slides, we will discussing about all these storage classes in detail. So the first one is S3 standard. So S3 standard is the default storage class. So when you are uploading an object and you don't choose any option for deciding what is storage class, then by default it will be S3 standard. For what scenario should be used? If you have some data which you need to access very frequently, then in that case you go with the S3 standard option. S3 provides 99.999, that is 11 nines durability for S3 standard. That means there are highly negligible chances that your data might be lost in S3 standard, and availability is 99.99. So there are very minimal chances that sometime when you are fetching the data it is not available. So why it is highly available and why it is durable? Because when you upload a data in S3 standard, the data is replicated to 3 or more availability zones. Means due to some reason, if one availability zone is failed or two availability zones are failed, even you will be able to access your data. So that's the reason you have high availability and high durability. No restrictions on minimum storage duration. What this means? So there are some storage classes where you have to upload the data for minimum like 128 KB or something. Even then, even if you upload data which is less than that size, it will cost you for 128 KB or that minimum amount size. But in S3 standard there is no such limit. You can upload the data with the minimum whatever size you want, and you will be charged only for that size. So this is all about the S3 standard. Next one is S3 intelligent tiering. As the name suggests that it is intelligent tiering, that S3 use its mind to identify which storage class it should store the data. So automatic storage class identification by AWS. So based how frequently you are accessing the data, or if you are accessing data after 1 month or 2 months or 6 months. So based on the base recommendation by S3, S3 itself chooses in which storage class your data should be provided. It is best suited for the scenario when access pattern is unknown or changing. So as we discussed in the S3 standard, you know that the data is highly frequently accessed. You need to access the data frequently. So you put it in the S3 standard. But say you don't know how frequently you want to access the data. It may be accessed every day or once in a month or once in a 6 month. In that case, you let S3 decide that in which storage class that object should be placed. So this is what S3 intelligent tiering do. So if access pattern is unknown or it is changing, then you should go with this storage class. Suitable for objects greater than 128 KB in size. So this is the point that we discussed. So here, if the size of an object is less than 128 KB, then it is not eligible for the intelligent tiering. So if you choose intelligent tiering for an object which is smaller in size than 128 KB, then by default S3 will put it in infrequent access class, and it won't do any analysis on that to move it to different classes. So your object size should be at least 128 KB so that S3 can put it intelligent tiering on top of it. Suitable for storage for at least 30 days. So what is this 30 days duration? So it is not like that if you are storing for less than 30 days, it will not do S3 intelligent tiering. It will do. But even if you delete the object before 30 days completes, it will charge you for 30 days. So that is, it is recommended that for the objects that you know you are going to store for 30 days, then put it in intelligent tiering. Otherwise, you will be charged for 30 days. Durability is same as SC standard, that is 11.9. Availability is little less, that is 99.9%. Here also data is replicated to 3 or more AZs, means it can also handle 2 AZ failure at a time. Since S3 is doing its monitoring on the object, so some monitoring and automation fee applies per object when you are using S3 intelligent tiering. So this is all about S3 intelligent tiering. Now next one is S3 standard IA, that is infrequent access. So as the name suggests, if you have any object which you are not accessing very frequently, say you want to access it 1 year in 15 months, or say you have some logs that you are putting in infrequent access and only on the requirement that when you want to analyze any failures or any issues, then only you are need to access that, so that you know that it is not going to access very frequently, and that is for long live, that you know at least we need it for at least 30 days to be in this pattern. Then we should go for standard IA, the infrequent access storage class. Charges retrieval fee for the object. So there are two things on the charges. The storage charges for this class is less than the storage charges of standard class. But when you are retrieving the object from this class, there is some small retrieval fee for the object. It also stores data redundantly across multiple AZs, as we saw for other classes. It is suitable for storage for at least 30 days. So same concept as we discussed in the last class, that if you stored the object for even for less than 30 days, it will charge you for at least 30 days. Durability is 11 nines and availability is little less, that is 99.9%. It is availability little less than compared to the other two classes that we discussed before this. So for what all scenarios, say if you want to do a backup, so you have the data, the main data that you are accessing, but you want to keep a backup that might be needed at some time, or you are implementing the DR scenario when during any disaster recovery you want to access the data from some place. So for such scenario you can put your data in the S3 standard IA, that is infrequent access. So this is all about the S3 standard IA class. Now next one is S3 one zone IA. So here also we should put the data which is infrequently accessed, but the another point that need to be keep in mind, this is one zone IA. One zone IA means data is stored only in one availability zone. So only such data, if that is lost due to some reason, it should not impact. So if you want to make any extra copies, or if you have the data easily readily you can create again, such cases you should use this. So this, the first is the same point. So this is for the long lived and infrequently accessed data. So the data that you don't want to access very frequently. Charges retrieval fee for the object is applicable but less than standard IA. In standard IA, the data is redundantly stored in multiple AZs. But in one zone IA, data is stored only in one availability zone. So there are more chances of getting the data loss. So you will see that the availability is less here. As discussed, store data only in one AZ, it is not fail safe. If that particular AZ went down due to some reason, your data won't be available. It is also suitable for storage for at least 30 days. So if you are storing for less than 30 days, it will charge you for at least 30 days. Durability is 11.9. Durability is same. So when you're trying to access data, most of the time you will get the data. And there is very less, and availability is 99.5. So here you can see why the availability is 99.5, because if that availability zone is down in which the data is stored, in that case you won't be able to fetch the data and data won't be available during that time. It is for storing any data that can be recreated if lost. So any data that can be quickly recreated, or when you are making a copy of the copy for some reasons, then you should use the infrequent access one zone IA. So retrieval fee is there, but which is less than the one zone, and anyway storage will be there, but storage fee will be less than all the classes that we discussed so far before this class. So next class that we are going to discuss is S3 Glacier. So this is one of the archival storage option which is provided by S3. So for long-term data archiving with retrieval times ranging from minutes to hours. So if you want to archive the data and you want that the retrieval time should be maximum in few hours, then you use this S3 Glacier option. Minimum storage duration is 90 days. So if you are storing for a duration which is less than 90 days, it will charge you for 90 days. Durability is 11 nines. That means the chances of losing the data is very less. Availability is also very high, that is 99.99 after restore object. What this means, that if you are trying to access the object, you cannot directly access the object from Glacier. First you have to retrieve the object and then you can access them. So that's the next point, must retrieve object before you can access them. And data is stored in a vault. So there is a S3 vault is there. So when you are archiving the data, it will go into vault, and you want to access, first you have to retrieve from the vault and then you can access the data. So this is all about S3 Glacier class. So the last class that we are going to discuss is S3 Glacier Deep Archive. So as the name suggests, this is also an archival solution, but this is the deep archive. So in the last class we discussed that the retrieval time is between minutes and hours, but here retrieval time will be more. So cheapest storage option in S3. So among all the classes options that we have discussed, this is the cheapest one. So this will cost you the minimum when you are storing the data in this class. Minimum storage duration is 180 days. So in the last archive solution we discussed, the minimum storage was 90 days. Here it is 180 days. So even if you store for 1 day, it will charge you for 180 days. Default retrieval time is 12 hours. So this timing difference you have to consider when you are comparing the S3 Glacier and S3 Glacier Deep Archive. So in the question there might be a requirement that you want to archive the data, but you want to uh, access it within couple of hours or within minutes. Then you will go with S3 Glacier option. But if it is saying you want the cheapest way to store the data and there is no time limit, you can, it is okay if you are accessing the data in 12 hours or 24 hours, then you will go with Deep Archive solution. So these all things you need to take into consideration when you are answering a particular question. Data is stored in vault. Durability is 11.9 durability. Availability is 99.99. So there is no compromise in durability or availability. But as we discussed in the last class, we must have to retrieve the object before we access them. So this is all about Glacier Deep Archive. So it is the cheapest class and the minimum or default retrieval time is 12 hours. So here in this table, we have all the differences and all the things are mentioned as in a tabular format, so we can compare them in one slide. So the various storage classes are all mentioned here, and if you see at the last there is an RRS, that is reduced redundancy storage class. So this is something which is on the depreciation part and which is not recommended by S3 anymore. So if any questions have this option, then we should not consider this option. Design for is what we discussed, that for which scenario which type of storage class should be used. So SC standard should be used for frequently accessed data, SC standard IA for long-lived infrequently accessed data, SC intelligent tiering when we don't know the access pattern, one zone IA that is for infrequently accessed and less critical data. So if data is lost, it won't cause any issue. Then S3 Glacier is for archival data, but when we want to access the data within some minutes or hours, then the cheapest solution is SC Glacier Deep Archive, where we retrieval time default is 12 hours and this is the cheapest solution. Then durability is mentioned, that we already discussed. Then availability varies based on the class type, and then what is the minimum storage duration, what is the minimum billing object size. Another important thing that we need to consider is the cost of storing, cost of retrieval, all those things, because in some question where that some thing is mentioned like the minimum or the cheapest solution is required for implementing some particular solution, then the cost will come into picture. So S3 standard is the most expensive one, where there is no pattern, nothing. For whatever duration we want to store, we can store. For how long we want to store, we can store. Then the second most expensive is S3 intelligent tiering, but the catch is there is an extra charge for monitoring the object, because the IA, that is AI, the AI is used, that is artificial intelligence is used from S3, which is deciding whether, when and which class the data or object should be stored. Then the third most expensive is the SC standard IA, that is infrequent access data. But other than the storage charges, there is some charges for retrieval, that is per GB retrieval fees applied. Then the fourth one is S3 one zone IA. So that is also per GB retrieval fee, but less than the standard IA, and the data might lost if that um, data won't be lost, but data will not be available during that time when the availability zone is not available. Then S3 Glacier, and the cheapest one is S3 Glacier Deep Dive. We are not considering RRS into the comparison. In this slide, we will discuss about the S3 lifecycle rules. So as we discussed that for each class there are some benefits, and for each class there may be some drawbacks for putting the object, but there could be some requirement that for some few days, say for first month, we want to access data very frequently, so we will put it in standard. Then say for next 2 months we want data, it will be infrequently accessed, we want to be accessing very frequently. Then why we want to put so many costs for putting in standard? So we should move the object from standard to infrequent access class. Then say after 90 days data we need for we need to be having it archive, we don't want to delete the data for some uh, regulation purpose or some reason, we want to keep it in the archive, and after 1 year we don't want the data at all. So there what we can do, for the first 30 days we can keep it in standard, and then for the next 60 days we can keep it in infrequent access, then we can move it to the archival solution, and after 1 year we will delete the object. So if you see the diagram, so these are the options from where to where we should be able to move the object as per the SC lifecycle. So if it is object is an SC standard, we have the option to move into any of these 5 classes. If it is an SC standard IA, then we cannot move from standard IA to standard, but we can move from standard IA to intelligent tiering, one zone, glacier, or glacier deep dive. SC intelligent tiering, we can move from intelligent tiering to one zone IA, glacier, glacier deep dive, and from one zone IA we can move to glacier, glacier deep dive, and from glacier we can only move to the glacier deep dive. So these rules, so we can put a rule on an object so that it will automatically will be moved from one class storage class to the another storage class after a duration of time. Rules to move the object to different storage class for cost saving. Encrypted object remain encrypted throughout the storage class transition process. So if an object is encrypted, then it is even moved to the second storage class, so the object will still remain encrypted. Rules can be applied to objects, bucket, patterns, or tag. So the rules, that lifecycle rules that we are implemented, we can not only can implement on an object, we can implement on a bucket level, so that whatever bucket objects are there in the bucket, it will applicable to all the objects. We can also tag the object. So say if we want to have a different policy for dev environment and a different policy for production environment, so we can have a tag as environment. So for environment as dev we can have a different policy, for the environment as production we can have a different policy. And pattern, so we can also define a pattern based on which the rules will be applicable. So example of the lifecycle rule, as we discussed, say first it is in a standard, after 15 days due to some reason we want to move it to the infrequent access, that will be accessed less frequently after 15 days, and we want to keep it in the infrequent access for 45 days. Then we want to archive it, then we can move it to the archival solution, and then after 1 year we can delete this. So all this can be implemented using a S3 lifecycle rule. Now let's consider the sample question. So first we will go through the questions, then we will go through all the options and come up with the best solution. You are an architect for an organization, and many application logs regularly return to AWS S3 bucket, and the only copy is available. So first thing you can understand from here is only copies available. That means if the data is lost, you cannot retrieve the data back. These files range from 10 MB to 500 MB in size and are not accessible regularly. So they are not accessed regularly. That means we should not put it in the standard because they are not regularly accessed. So infrequent access storage class is one of the good option. These are required occasionally to troubleshoot the application issue. The application teams needs the last 60 days of log files to be immediately available when required. So for 60 days we should not archive the data, but logs older than 60 days need not to be accessible immediately, but need to keep a copy for reference. So after 60 days we don't need it immediately, but we cannot delete it, we need it for reference. What approach would you recommend to keep the billing cost to a minimum? So here billing cost is minimum is mentioned. So if there is no cost restriction, we can keep it in standard, right? but they have mentioned that we want to store the class which should meet our requirement as well as cost us the least. So let's go with the options. First option is set object store class to standard. Why we want to use standard? Because it is an infrequent access data, so we want to use standard because it will charge more. Second, set storage class to standard. Again same thing, we want to be storing standard. Set object storage class to one zone IA. So here they are mentioning to use infrequent access, but they are mentioning one zone, but here clearly mentioned that only one copy is available. So if the data is lost, or say if the that availability zone is gone down, then we will lose the data. So we want using set object storage class to standard IA. Use lifecycle management to move the data from standard IA to Glacier after 16 days. So first we will keep it in standard IA because it is a leak frequently data, and then after 60 days they need it for reference but not need to access very frequently. So D is the right option. So this is all that we want to discuss about the storage classes. I hope this will help in your journey to clear your certification. So any question you are gonna get on the storage classes, this information should be enough for you to answer those questions. Thank you.